right? If you look at the world around us, you look at a building. We see a building, but a building was actually the result of tons of processes built on top of each other to say, well, first we lay this, then we lay this, then we lay this, then we lay this. But when you look at a building, you don't see all the processes that go involved into it. And it's hard to understand how you take from nothing, flat ground, into this building exists. And a model's kind of the same way. How do I take this blank piece of sheet, or this sheet with just a bunch of grid and lines, and create something which says, hey, this is actually how your business works? Now we're ready to actually create a model and create our first forecast. So we created a new sheet called a model sheet, and we started off by outlining the dates. We make sure we set our dates appropriate. We start off by saying, hey, we're gonna start this by forecasting from September 2017 going forward, and then we want to forecast it over 12 months. Now, here's an example where there's simple ways to do this and more complicated ways to do this. A simple way to do this is just to type in the month September, and then type in October, November, December. Another one is to say this is month number 9, and create a simple formula to make an increase. Another way to do this is to use a more specific formula in Google Sheets. It's meant for this sort of things. Something like eDate, where we type in the formula, reference the start date to one more month, creates a simple formula we can then copy and drag right across that creates the date range going forward. So it'd be very easy to do. There's always a simple way to do these forecasts and a more complicated way. There's no one right answer, other than the right answer is the one that helps you get the model done and helps you understand how it works so you can make business decisions. We're trying to create a structure where we can take the one column of calculations and just carry it across so that our structure at least remains consistent throughout. Outline the process of the model from what we're trying to, the major way that the company grows, web traffic, advertising, whatever, and show the entire conversion path down to the metrics we care about: customers, revenues, profits. The most important thing is get that done for the first month. So we're going to start by forecasting our organic or our free web traffic channel, right? So we're starting with this because it's an easy way to forecast the growth of the business, because we know we've already identified this is one of our major growth channels. So we're going to start by forecasting this. And so we're going to be very prescriptive, outlining each specific metric goes into this. So we're starting with free web traffic, and we know that free web traffic converts, conversion rate, and a conversion rate to orders. And we know that we have an average order value or average revenue per order, and then that turns into revenue. We also know that we have an average cost per order, and that turns into overall costs. We also know that revenues minus costs equals profits. Then we know that we have a profit sharing, so we do a percentage profit share, and that turns into profits shared. And then our overall net profits, and then that's a first start. So now we're going to start by pulling in some of the numbers we've already done in our notes to start creating our formula or equation that underlies our business. So we'll start with free web traffic. We're going to assume that was 1,000 sessions last month. So our conversion rate was 3%, and then our orders is then 1,000 times 3%. Our average order value is actually a little more complicated than this, right? So we know we had an initial assumption around what our revenue per shirt was. Now we have to know how many shirts were sold per order. We can expand on this. So we know the average shirt sold per order was 2, and our average revenue per shirt was 21. So our average order value is 21 times 2. So overall revenues is 30 orders times average order value. Now our cost per order, we know from our previous notes that that's 7. So overall cost is cost per order times orders. Profits is then revenues minus costs. We actually made a mistake. Cost per order is actually not 7. Our cost per order, we actually have cost per shirt is 7, and therefore our costs per order is actually 7 times 2, or 14. So the profit sharing, again, we had an assumption of 20% profit sharing. So our profit sharing is 8 profits times percentage. Net profit earned is profits minus what we shared. Now, this is the first beginning of an equation that takes us from web traffic all the way down to profits. Now, the next step is to take this first month and now carry it across the entire date range we've already created. So you can highlight the full cells, carry it across, and we have our first forecast. Now, you might notice that there's no real growth here. Profits, revenues, everything's exactly the same throughout. So now we have to go back in and add in some growth. So we're going to create a new line in here. We're going to call this growth percentage. And we're going to assume a growth of 5% a month. And to be clear, we're going to assume a growth in web traffic. So we're going to change the formula for the traffic slightly. Instead of just having it be 1,000, it's going to be whatever it was last month times that 5% growth for this month and 1050. And we're going to reformat this to show that it's a number that's being calculated. We're going to take these two numbers and then pull them across. And now we have an actual growth forecast. And you can see profits continuing to rise every single month as web traffic increases every month. Now, of course, this is just one channel. So we've outlined previously that we have organic traffic, advertising, Facebook advertising, Google advertising. These are the major methods of growth. So we would then take forecast and do this again for Facebook. For Facebook, we would start off by saying dollars spent on Facebook advertising. The goal of spending money on Facebook advertising is to get clicks. Well, that comes from a cost per click. And then clicks equals traffic from Facebook. And once you do that, then the continuing on the rest of it is as simple as taking the exact same methodology. Conversion rate, orders, revenue per shirt, shirts per order, all the way down, creates the exact same full forecast for that channel. And then if you want to increase some growth there, simply insert a new growth assumption for the amount you grow Facebook ads per month. And this way you create a revenue forecast which is based on a business decision in terms of how much money you're going to spend on Facebook ads. So you may ask yourself, if the numbers are the same for each channel, do I really have to break out each metric individually? For a quick forecast, no, you don't, right? For building and truly representing and understanding each channel, probably yes. Each line can have different data and metrics particular to it. You can have a very different conversion rate for your social media traffic as opposed to your search ads. You can have very different growth curve in your organic traffic versus your paid. If we're trying to grow revenue, that can mean a number of different ways to grow revenue inside the business. Growing traffic, growing advertising spend, getting better click rates, spending less per click, getting higher conversion rates, getting more items per order. And the more level of detail you get in there, the more you can actually use the forecast to allocate your time, your efforts, your money, your staff. Now, after you've done 3 channels, we can then sum them up into an overall revenue, costs, profits. The next thing we want to model is cash, right? So we've already made some assumptions in terms of what our cash burn is, what we're starting with, but we really want to figure out how our cash position change over time. So we're going to do a simple kind of cash model from this. We're going to say cash at beginning of month, cash burn during the month. We're going to say cash profits, cash at end of month. And this cycle of doing any metric or account which has a beginning, some changes kind of throughout it through the month, and then an end, is a very normal way you're going to forecast many different counts over time. So this cash at the beginning of the month, we're going to link this directly to our assumption in terms of what our cash on hand is. This cash burn, we know it's 1,000, we're going to link directly to this. Our cash profits is actually calculated directly above. It's this net profits above. Cash at the end of the month is then cash at the beginning minus the burn plus the profits equals cash at the end of the month. Now the cash for the beginning of next month is the same as what it was at the end of this month. And then we can take the same formula, carry it across, then take this month, carry it across, and now we have a forecast of our burn, of our profits, and our cash throughout the year. So at the end of this forecast, you might start thinking, okay, well, I have a forecast, but now what do I do with it? So we have a number of months across. We need to look at some of the totals. We created some goals earlier on in terms of what our expectations were. Well, let's actually see what actually happened. Like, how many revenues do we have? Let's sum the months across. We're going to sum it across. And we may want to care about what our overall costs and profits were. So we'll take the same formula and do the total for costs and do the same thing for profits, total shared, total net profits. So this is probably going to be uncomfortable because, one, this is probably the first time you create a forecast. Two, we came into this creating a goal for revenues and profits, and we create a forecast, and it may or may not line up with that. You could be way under, you could be way high. This could expose it could just not look like you thought it was going to be. And that's going to be a deeply uncomfortable process. And that's okay, right? The whole point of this is to create the structure that enables us to understand this. And then later we're going to go and refine all the different numbers that come into this. One of the biggest fears from people creating spreadsheets is getting the math wrong. And it's hard, I know. But this is like the major thing to get over. By doing this, the more you can have a consistent structured format, the more we pull inputs out of formulas and label inputs on sheets, the more we're able to stick to a consistent formatting of calculations from one column all the way over, the more we'll have clarity and confidence that the math is correct.